What if the lights just shut off and never came back on again? If this were to happen, what would follow would be absolute bedlam. You can picture it now. At first, there'd be confusion and then panic as people realized that their phones were dead. Cars wouldn't start. Air conditioners stopped working. The TV was full of static, and even the emergency radio was silent. Within hours, every city would be plunged into darkness. Hospitals lost power. Blood ran out of supply. Pumps at water treatment plants ground to a halt, sending millions into a desperate fight to find clean drinking water. Supermarket freezers emptied out. Food supplies rapidly spoiled. Public order broke down as people did whatever it took to survive. This nightmare scenario isn't some far-fetched dystopian fiction. It's actually the very real possibility of our modern world being sent back centuries by an unrepaired electrical grid. But how exactly could this happen? What would it take to send the world into this kind of chaos? Here on this channel, we investigate the darkest corners of the human experience, exploring what could go wrong, why it might happen, and how you can be prepared for any situation. Our topic today falls into a category that experts call low probability, high consequence. This refers to rare events with potentially catastrophic effects. These are situations we don't expect to occur, but which could lead to some of the worst outcomes imaginable if they do. Low probability, high consequence events are all around us. For instance, volcanic eruptions. On average, volcanoes only erupt once every few hundred years, but when they do, they can destroy entire cities in an instant, as happened in 79 AD, when Mount Vesuvius buried the Roman city of Pompeii under ash. We know eruptions are unlikely, but they still pose a grave threat. This is why monitoring systems keep watch over volcanoes like Mount Vesuvius and Mount St. Helens. Another low probability, high consequence event is what we're going to focus on here. Massive solar storms. A solar storm occurs when the sun ejects massive amounts of plasma or charged particles. When this happens, a magnetic field gets released along with it. If the Earth's magnetic field lines get connected to the field lines from the sun, electric currents can flow into the upper atmosphere. This causes a geomagnetic storm. Geomagnetic storms have always existed since the sun began its fiery existence and the Earth formed. However, modern society is much more susceptible to their effects than previous generations because of all the technology that has become so integral to our daily lives. In this modern age, power grids are highly interconnected. They spread electricity over vast distances through sensitive electronic equipment. Satellites circle the planet, providing global communications and navigation services. Our systems for distributing food, clean water, and medical care rely on electricity. A single event can compromise the integrity of the whole system. But what does the science say about the likelihood of such an event occurring? How worried should we really be? In reality, scientists don't know precisely how likely an extreme solar storm is. That's because there are so many variables involved in such calculations. The sun's behavior is chaotic. This makes accurate predictions extremely difficult. However, we do know that certain solar activity increases the chance of geomagnetic storms. For instance, solar flares and coronal mass ejections, both of which carry plasma, increase the risk of a powerful geomagnetic storm. Also, the sun goes through 11-year cycles of activity. During the peaks of these cycles, solar flares and CMEs are more common. There are also long periods of quietude, followed by years of heightened activity. These cycles are fairly predictable, but the exact timing is unknown. Sometime between 2022 and 2025, we will reach the peak of the current cycle. So how strong can solar storms get? In 1859, the world experienced one of the most violent solar storms in recorded history. It became known as the Carrington event. The story goes that on September 6th, British astronomer Richard Carrington was looking at the sun, making routine observations. He noticed a flash of bright light coming from the sun, which lasted about 5 minutes. 5 days later, on September 11th, a telegraph operator in Ohio noticed a strange current flowing through his circuits. When he touched the key, his hand was badly shocked. Auroras appeared as far south as Cuba and Hawaii. Telegraph systems across the world started working without even being connected to a power source. Scientists estimate that the CME associated with the Carrington event was about 4,300 miles per hour, which is 1920 meters per second. If a storm of this magnitude were to strike today, it would be disastrous. Power grids would fail, telecommunications networks would collapse, GPS and other satellite-based systems would go offline. With no way to exchange information, hospitals would be unable to operate. Patients on stretchers would be carried outside, while doctors used flashlights to examine them. Water pumps would stop working. People would be left without water, or the ability to cook food or keep it fresh. Grocery stores would quickly become ransacked. No refrigeration would mean that meat would spoil within hours, followed by the rotting of other perishable goods. Roads would soon be clogged with abandoned vehicles after their batteries died. Without functioning traffic lights, intersections would become chaotic. There would be no quick fix for the problem either. Unlike earthquakes, hurricanes and other natural disasters, a solar superstorm doesn't just affect one location. Its effects reverberate throughout the entire planet. The damage to the power infrastructure could be so extensive that repairs could take months or even years to complete. And the further away we are from restoring electricity, the greater the risk of social unrest and conflict. After all, people have to eat, and clean water isn't optional. When the supply trucks stop rolling, the stores are emptied out, and farms rot in the fields. Starvation and disease will claim countless victims. Many won't die from hunger or thirst, but rather from the lack of medical care. A solar storm of Carrington level or greater could send the world back to a medieval level of development. But exactly how big does a storm need to be to cause so much widespread damage? Some researchers believe that a storm hitting the Earth with 2,000 or more centimeters cubed of energy per second could do the trick. According to NASA, a storm of this magnitude would result in a total blackout. Our computerized way of life would grind to a halt. Auroras would be visible as far south as Florida and southern Brazil. Others argue that an even more conservative estimate would be a storm packing at least 1 billion watts of energy. Such an event would cause cascading blackouts. Not a total global blackout, but different parts of the planet would lose power. Imagine your local power company telling you that the lights may be out for several weeks, months, or maybe even longer. But that's just their estimate for you personally. In reality, some areas would be in the dark for years. This means that after the initial shock of losing power wore off, people would have to make an agonizing decision. Leave the devastated area and try to build a new life somewhere else, or stay put and try to forge ahead in a broken world. Solar storms don't have to be quite so extreme to cause problems. Even smaller storms can interfere with radio communications and disrupt GPS signals. And as we rely increasingly on technology to perform even the simplest of tasks, we become more vulnerable to these events. Could a solar storm like the Carrington event happen again? There's no doubt that something of that scale is possible. Solar activity has been increasing steadily over the last decade, and we've just entered the next phase of the solar cycle, which will peak sometime between 2022 and 2025. But there's another reason to worry. Scientists believe that the Sun is entering a new and more active period of activity. This could mean that we're due for an even more extreme solar event than the Carrington. But whether something like that could happen again anytime soon is anybody's guess. One thing's for sure, though, the effects of even a moderately strong solar storm would be devastating in the modern era. If you think this sounds like a doomsday prediction, consider that some experts have suggested that the Carrington event itself might have been much more intense than what the historical record indicates. What if the Sun was much more active back then? What if the Earth had been hit by a solar storm of truly unprecedented strength? Who knows? Maybe in the annals of history, the year 2022 will be remembered as the time the lights went out forever. It's clear that extreme weather events can pose some of the greatest threats to our survival, but it's equally true that they offer valuable lessons in preparedness. So check out this video for some insights on how to thrive in the aftermath of a climate disaster, or click this other video instead. Don't forget to subscribe for more great content.